Hi, everyone. It's Denise Brown from the Caregiving Years Training Academy, and welcome to our Caregiving Book Club podcast. I'm so excited to have two friends with me, Deb Hallisey. Hi, Deb.
Hi, hello. Hello.
And Cathy Sikorski. Hi, Cathy.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here.
So I invited Deb and Cathy to join me because they are authors. They have written books about caregiving. Cathy has written a book called Who Moved My Teeth, as well as, I want to make sure I get it right, Showering with Nana. Those are two of Cathy's books. And then Deb's book, Deb is also one of our certified caregiving consultants, is called Your Caregiver Relationship Contract. So it's great to talk to you guys as fellow authors and share what it's like to write a book. In particular, write a book that's been inspired by a caregiving experience. So I'm curious, when did you guys start to think that, oh my gosh, I think I have a book in me? Deb, would you
Well,
like to go first? Oh,
Sure, I can.
I would love to hear this.
Yeah, well, it's really funny because I'm a blogger, and from the very beginning, everybody kept saying to me, "You have to write a book. You have to write a book," and I was just like, I don't know what it would be about. And then, Denise, you were the impetus for it because we brought our caregiving conference, a regional conference, to New Jersey in September of 2019, and I was one of the speakers. And as soon as I figured out what I was going to talk about, I was like, oh, there's the book. And that's exactly how it happened. There's the book. And part of the reason it was there's the book is because the book is actually about 5 or 6 blog posts that I knitted together because it got such a reaction from my readers. So I was being urged to do it, but I had to have that aha moment like, yes, this is my space to do it in.
so it sounds like the conference was really just that gentle nudge to give you, in essence, a deadline and a marketing opportunity. If I'm going to speak at this conference, I want to have a book that's published that I can use the conference as a promotional vehicle.
100%. That was the motivation. Yep.
Oh, I love that. I love motivation. Okay. Cathy, how about you? When did you see yourself as an author?
So, my first book, which is about when my 92-year-old Nana came to live with me when I had a 2-year-old at the same time, during the time of that experience, which was daunting and hilarious all at the same time. If you can imagine raising a 2-year-old and a 92-year-old with a tiny bit of dementia at the time. And they decided to gang up on me. And so my self-defense was I started journaling. And I just kept this journal this whole time. And then that faded away. And as you both know, I became a caregiver for 8 different family members and friends over the next 30 years and honed my law practice to elder law because that seemed to be what I was doing. And I need to know what that was about. And as I'm doing all these practical things and realizing what elder law is about, I decided that my first book would be about that experience, just turn that journal into a book. And that's what I did, because quite frankly, a lot of it was already written in that regard. And then as my practice as an attorney became really, really entrenched in caregiving, as did my life, I decided I'm just learning too many things, both legally and practically, not to share this. This has to be shared. And as you both know, Denise and Deb, there was a time when there weren't a lot of caregiving books out there. Like we've sort of come up through the ranks with now there's lots. Now it's happening. Now we're reaching a place where there's a caregiving book all the time, but there's nothing wrong with that. We're not in competition. We're all sharing our experiences and hoping people can learn from it. But my book and even Deb's book, even though it was back in 2019, were kind of an impetus, a starting of these caregiving books from different perspectives. So mine are actually both from 2 different perspectives. One from the hilarious, crazy times of being in the sandwich generation, and the other one from, you know what, guys, this is what I've learned, and you can do this too, but you need to have these tools.
So I'm actually from a family of writers, and my
Wow.
older sister was always the gifted writer in the family. So I always kind of deferred to her as being the writer. And I actually was an English major at University of Illinois, and I took creative writing courses because I loved to write. And I could not think of a darned thing to write during my creative writing classes, which I thought was fascinating and yet horrifying. What am I going to write about if I don't have anything to write about? And you know what happened? Once I started working with family caregivers, I never stopped writing. They gave
Wow.
me so many stories and so many insights and so many perspectives about life that it just was so easy to write. I just find that fascinating. Who would think that?
The world of caregiving is really the world of stories, though, isn't it?
Yes,
I mean,
yes,
that's
yes.
really what it is. And we've been blessed as writers with this opportunity to share what we've learned through stories, which is a very compelling way to get messages across, right? And so it's no surprise to either of you that I'm a more talker than a writer. I love to talk. And of course I'm a speaker and I turn my stories into those things, but they all come from story. Everything that we do comes from our caregiving stories, and we've been blessed in a way to have this opportunity to be writers through our experiences.
For me, it was the stories of others. So when I started writing about caregiving, I hadn't had a personal caregiving experience yet. So I started with a newsletter that I published. And the first issue came out in January of 1995. And I had family caregivers who contributed articles. And then I wrote based on the stories they told me. So in essence, what I did was I captured stories and then turned them around to make sense to the storyteller, so to speak. So I heard the story and I said, based on what you're telling me, it sounds like this. And that was how I first started writing about caregiving.
What I love about that is that the writing experience can come from anywhere. Like, it's not, you weren't personally involved in the caregiving world, which is kind of bizarre because ultimately you became very involved in the caregiving world. But writing, I mean, if we're just talking to people who want to write books and just don't think they have the impetus to do it or the courage to do it, just know that writing comes from everywhere, and you don't have to be, quote, a writer. You don't have to study writing. Just if you feel that there's a story in you and a message in you, just write it. Just go for it. Write it.
I have found that the best skill for me as a writer is to be able to listen. Deb, what did you want to add?
It's so interesting because I always, and I've shared this with you, Denise, I loved writing as a kid, but the way I wrote was not what teachers were looking for. And so I didn't get the grades I wanted and expected. So it took me a really long time to name myself as a writer, which allowed me then to name myself an author, and it gave me the freedom to do it. But I agree that it's all about like the blog and the book are very personal stories. They're family stories wrapped around the fact that with certain skills in effective communication, that caregiving journey can heal a relationship, not break it. And that's our family story. My mom and I have healed our relationship instead of breaking it, through this. But it's so interesting to me, by far the largest article that got any kind of response was the one titled, "Today I Will Be Her Daughter and Not Her Caregiver." And I wrote it for my mom's 85th birthday because what I recognized is that when I'm with her, I'm so task focused, we lost the mother-daughter relationship. And that's a real loss. And I needed to be very, very intentional about making the time to go back to that. And so many people are like, oh yeah, you're right. I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. And so it was just very affirming to get that input from other caregivers, because it was like, oh, okay, I'm not crazy.
Yeah, right. Yes. Right. Yes.
Are universal on some level, that we
Right.
all experience. So yeah, it's really interesting.
You talk about, in essence, the risk of putting an idea out into the world.
Mhm.
And that it's a greater risk that you put this idea out into the world from your own personal experience. And in many ways, you're also telling someone else's story, which is your mom's story. And I find that to be intimidating. And I wondered how you worked through that feeling of, I'm putting my heart out into the world. Be nice.
Yeah. Golly, I have to say, I write almost like I'm talking with my friends, right? Like if you read my writing, it's not so much academic, although it can be, but I tend to write as if I'm talking to you. And I have had these conversations with the people I call my caregiver support peeps, the people that support me in supporting my mom. And so because I've had these conversations, we have these discussions, it was less about me feeling vulnerable than it was about, okay, it's a step. I'm going to tell you our life story like I would do if I was talking to you. I think the more interesting thing to get over was at where would I have crossed a boundary in terms of my mom, right? So like my mom knows I write about her. I have read her, the articles that are a part of this. Yeah, so it was more about my mom than about me, to be honest with you. But writing, particularly about a subject like this, is really putting your heart on the line and making you very vulnerable. Like I would have been crushed with the people I sent the book to that were like, this is really awful, don't publish it. It was my heart.
Yes.
Thank God everybody's like, this is really good, this is helpful.
Cathy, how about for you? Because you
Yeah.
tell personal stories. How did you work through, what do I tell? What do I put out in the world? And what do I keep for myself?
You do. And it honestly, the keep for yourself part, Deb is right. It's more about how much are you willing to put other people's foibles out there, right? I mean, you are also putting out, especially in my books, I tell it pretty straight about how I am not the perfect person. I have made a lot of mistakes. And one of my favorite reviews was a 1-star review, which said, she promised she wasn't going to swear anymore, and then she just kept doing it. Because that's what I was doing. I was telling the truth, right? I wanted to be a better person, but I was struggling to be a better person during the caregiving time, right? So yeah, truth can get you in trouble, both with yourself and with outsiders. Anne Lamott, very famous writer, wrote Bird by Bird. She said, I'm pretty sure it was her who said, if this is your story to tell and your truth to tell, and if people don't like it, they should have treated you better.
Sounds like Anne Lamott.
Right? So sometimes I took that to heart and sometimes I left it out. But I will say, and this is true for pretty, famous writers now. Glennon Doyle is a very famous, Brene Brown, everybody knows her, whatever. The more truth you tell, the more you seem to hit a common thread of understanding, and people are willing to, join in with you, to jump in, to say, okay, you get that this is hard, where I'm coming from, and you're being honest about it. You're not candy coating it. So I try to be that way without hurting my family too much.
I just released a book earlier this month of May, where I talk about my experiences caring for my parents. At the same time, I was running a business that helped family caregivers. And at the same time, I was trying to really change the family caregiver experience. And it did not go well. And so I am very truthful about what my experience was basically in the caregiving space, is where the truth really is. And I had debated about how much do I tell. And my editor was really helpful about working that through with me. And I find your words, Cathy, very helpful. We don't have to tell everything, but we can tell the truth in a way that's helpful.
Yes, exactly.
And I also talked myself through the reviews too. I thought, well, if people don't like this, it's okay. I feel like it's an important story for me to tell because in essence, the story talks about why family caregivers are still suffering. A lot
Yeah.
of that suffering is because of the space of caregiving, which
Yes.
does not collaborate, which is very siloed. It's fragmented and awful. And that was my
Yes.
experience trying to work with other organizations. And so I talk about that. And I think that's really important to share that
Exactly.
we own part of the pain of family caregiving today. Not necessarily the three of us, but you know what I mean? The space, so to speak.
Yeah. It's funny you should say that, to just kind of tag on that a little bit, because I gave myself a deadline of that September. I wrote my book between April and August, which is just insane if you think about it in terms of how quick that happened. And I did nothing but write. Like, I gave up on everything else, right? That was the focus. But I did two things that I would think was incredibly smart for me. One was I worked with a woman who mentored me through the process and also helped me self-publish. She owns a company called Open Door Publications. I knew somebody had to keep me on track. But the other thing I did is I asked my best friend, who I've known for more than 40 years, to read the rough draft. And then I asked our mutual friend, Michelle Seitzer, who is a writer. I knew from Michelle, I would get the writing perspective. And from Roberta, I got the perspective of somebody who's known my mother and I for 40 years.
Mm.
That kept me honest.
Mm-hmm.
It really, really did. That was incredibly helpful. Just really helpful to have those perspectives while I was writing.
And Cathy, you've worked with a publisher.
I do.
Yeah.
I love my publisher. Yeah, she's actually become a really, really good friend of mine. I'm working on my third book right now, and also on a deadline, which I have to behave, and it's really hard. Writing is hard, you guys. Anybody's listening to this and they're writing, let me just underscore, if you think it's hard, you're right. It's hard. You have to commit, and it's hard. It's just intensely hard. So anyway, yes, I love my publisher. This is called partner publishing. So it's a little bit like self-publishing, but not quite, because quite frankly, I don't have the stamina to do putting it on Amazon and figuring out how to print my books. I don't want to deal with any of that. I just want to call her and say, I need 100 books. I'm doing an event, that's the beauty of, and she also, helps me find an editor. She helped me find somebody to design my cover, stuff like that. But she also happens to just be a very, very good friend and a supportive publisher who does a lot what Deb says, keeps you on track and helps you focus, and also helps you figure out if you're really just going down the wrong road in terms of even structure, like, this is not looking right. This isn't what you want to say. It doesn't make any sense, and I had an editor. I had a separate editor that I had hired who was amazing. I love that guy. And I also had beta readers. I had friends read my book and tell me what they thought. Of course, they knew my story, like Deb says. But it was just more about, does this make sense? Is it clear? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? That kind of a thing, especially in the how-to book. So yeah, you got to be willing to accept criticism. Sometimes it's hard from people you know and love, but it's really helpful. Deb's absolutely right about that.
Yeah, I think of it as feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So I self-published my very first book, which is The 6 Stages of Caregiving, which actually the 9th edition is just about to come out. And I self-published it in 1999. And here's how I self-published. I went to Kinko's and they printed it out and they did a spiral bind. And then I sold it through my website and people bought it. And I think about self-publishing now, and it's just a whole different animal. It is so amazing and awesome. Anybody can publish a book. It doesn't have to be print and Kindle. It could be one or both. And it's very easy to do. It's amazing. It's amazing. So if you're thinking about writing a book, you can actually self-publish and it doesn't cost you a dime. That's the other part about it. It's really just true. The wear and tear on your heart and your hand writing. That's the price you pay. So let's talk a little bit about our library. So we're authors and writers, so that means we're also readers. So what is it that you guys like about your local library? So Deb, go ahead, tell us.
Oh golly. I'm the kid that every Saturday their parent would drop off at the library and come back in 2 hours, and I'd walk out of the library with books. Um, right now, the book I'm reading currently. I love hard copy, hard print books. But right now, the book I'm reading currently, I can access on my iPad, my phone, or my tablet, which is just insane. And if I'm really at a good point, I will walk the dog reading my phone. Right. So I'm, to me, the library just opens the world to you, just opens the world to you. And I remember just getting, and still get, so excited about walking in and the smell of it.
Mhm.
And just like looking at all the books, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, how many do I have? It's interesting. It's really, really interesting. It's always been a part of my life, always will be a part of my life, the library and reading.
Cathy, how about for you?
So I assume that what Deb meant, because this is what I do as well, I am using Libby, which is the library on your phone, your Kindle, whatever, especially with COVID, right? Our library was technically closed. And so that has just opened such great doors for people, but especially in the caregiving world, like my mom can get a book online, she's on a tablet. I can get a book online on a tablet. Like if you were stuck at home, this opened so many doors. This library access through technology has been absolutely amazing. Which is not to say I don't love going to my library physically, because I'm just like Deb. I was the kid who was dropped off. Well, actually, we walked on Saturday to the library. I honestly, I could have been there 12 hours. Nobody cared. I had a family of 6 kids. My mom didn't know where I was. It didn't matter as long as I got home in time for dinner. But the library was where I would spend eons of time. Yes, we're readers and I love to read. So the library for a caregiver world is an incredible resource. And now that it's online, oh my God, how amazing is that, right? So we have the opportunity to not only write these books, give them to care, put them out in the caregiving world, but then they can access them. If they can't get to the library, they can still have them. How great is that? So I want to encourage our librarians to, make sure that they have a caregiving library, because this is a really critical piece of what we do and what people need in our world.
Yeah, my family also is big user of libraries. I actually have a niece who's a librarian at the library in the suburb that I live in. And I love that the library is a resource for every generation. No matter how old you are, there's something at the library for you. And I think that's so awesome. And where can we go for something that can transform our day at no price except
free.
to the library? It's amazing. It's an
is.
amazing resource in our communities. I am looking forward to reading Adam Grant's new book. It's Original Thinkers. I just watched a video where he talked about that. I don't know if you're familiar with his work. I find him very comforting. He has a book called Givers and Takers that just made me feel so much better about what I was experiencing, which was a bunch of takers, and I could not figure out what was going on. Yeah,
I think I need that book today.
there you go. And you can get it at the library.
And I can. I'm going to get it. Givers and Takers.
Yeah, Givers and Takers. He does really great work. And I would say if you're interested in learning more about him, he has a great newsletter that comes out once a month.
Okay, thank you. That's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so if you are, I guess if for our listeners who are wondering, oh my gosh, how do I start this? I have it all up here in my head and I want to put it on paper, put it in my computer. How do you start? What do you think, Deb? How do you start the process of writing the book?
Well, I think Cathy and I kind of did it in the same way. I blogged about it and wrote articles. So it wasn't, you know, bird by bird, right? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Don't get overwhelmed by thinking I've got to do it all. Like I had to do an outline and a structure, just the way you would if you were writing a paper, an outline and a structure. And then I wrote it bird by bird, just like the title of Anne Lamont's book. I would just say, you know, do it in a journal and then knit those articles together, or just sit down and write for yourself and knit that together. And, you know, don't bird by bird, don't do the whole elephant kind of, and even that outline, you can change. You can add to it, delete it, because that's your outline. The other thing I would say is don't self-edit, like just do it. Just get it out there and do it. And then you can go back and edit later. It doesn't have to be perfect the first time around. It's not going to be, because so often your head is ahead of what you can type or you can write, however you choose to do it. Just kind of get it out there, and just do it. Just do it.
That's super good advice. I would like to say though, unlike Deb, who is super organized, I'm a messy writer. I just write a bunch of things. And for the very reason that she just said, is just to get it down, because once I have something on paper, then I have something to work with. You know, now I have my Play-Doh and I can change it and mold it and move it and cut it. And for me, it's that blank screen has to just go away. It's just getting something on that paper so I'm not looking at a blank screen. And so I would also suggest, because this is what I do, I make myself write so many words a day. And it's not every day. Like I don't punish myself if, you know, Thursday comes and I didn't get any words written that day. But if you just want to start with 100 words, 100 words is nothing. You can write 100 words in probably 10 minutes, right? And if that's enough for you, and it doesn't get you going, you know, you're done at your 100 words, then be done. But if you start and you have 100 words and you just keep going because you're in a flow, you're going to have, but if you tell yourself, I'm just going to write 100 words every day at 3 o'clock, whatever it is, that is very motivating, because it's not like a big chunk of work. I don't have to write a whole chapter of a book. 100 words, anybody can do that, right? So that's another little tip I might put out there, but don't be afraid to be messy in the beginning. Everyone's messy.
The art of writing is rewriting, which
is
true. Deb and Cathy, what you were just talking about is just write. Just write. The hardest part is the first iteration of your writing. Just write it. Don't worry about it being perfect, just like what you said, Deb, because you're going to go back and rewrite it. It's so much easier to rewrite. So just get out that first draft and then go back. The other thing that I found helpful is I created content which became books. Right. So for instance, on Mondays, for years, probably 10 years, I used to write what I called a daily comfort. And it was always on Monday. So I knew on Monday I had to write that. And people liked them. So I thought, well, that's a book. So then I created books from them. And then I created a series of webinars around what I consider to be our caregiving fatigues. So during a caregiving experience, we get tired of trying, we get tired of feeling discouraged, we get tired of not feeling supported. So then I took 12 of those caregiving fatigues and turned it into a book called Healing Words, which is what I just released earlier this month. So I would say you can also create a schedule around content that you create that you know you're going to actually move into a book at some point. And that way you don't have to feel this, oh my God, I got to sit and write. But if you have something that you do on Mondays and something else that you do on Wednesdays. And I found it helpful to think of a block of time that I spent writing. Exactly. I had a harder time doing by the words. So I would say, you got to sit for an hour and write. You got to do it for an hour. And then that would be what I would do for an hour. And I think everybody has different times of the day where they feel more creative. And so I would do it first thing in the morning. And then I didn't get sidetracked by something else that was going on in the day. And then I wasn't tired when I wrote. I would get up and just write. And then it was done. I didn't have to worry about it. I'll ask this last question. So when is your writing space? What time of the day?
I'm morning, and I do best if I just get up, grab coffee, go sit down and start writing, and don't look at anything else. Don't look at TV. Don't look at my telephone. Don't do anything. That's my best writing time. Yeah, for sure. And if I miss it, it's kind of a missed opportunity for me because I can't seem to get my day back, to get my mind in that space. And I know that's mental. I know that's right here. I get that, but that's who I am. I know who I am, right? So every day that I can really get up and go sit down and just do that and stop whenever it feels natural to stop, unless I do have something I have to do, that is my best writing days for sure.
I'm
How
not
about you, Deb?
not a morning person by any stretch of the imagination, you know, so I'm more of an afternoon person, you know, and that idea of like an hour or 2 hours or whatever it is really helpful for me to just say, this is the chunk of time I'm going to do it. And interestingly enough, particularly like if I'm writing an article, like I can think about it for days, but if I say you have 1 hour to write this, it gets written. It gets written. So even with the book, I'm like, you have 1 day to write the first draft of this chapter, right? Or 2 days, whatever it was. It's almost like it's a mental discipline for me. Just to go back to Denise, what you said in terms of it's really editing. The thing that sticks in my mind when I was going through this process is one of my favorite quotes from Maya Angelou. When she did the first poem for President Obama's inauguration, somebody said to her, well, it was a great poem. She said, it wasn't a great poem. It was a good poem. And they're like, why? She goes, I didn't have enough edit time. And that for me was very true. Like I've got to put it aside and then come back to it. And then I have clarity. So just getting it down, putting it aside, and then getting clarity in the afternoons is what worked for me.
Okay. Deb, thank you so much. The name of your book is Your Caregiver Relationship Contract. Cathy, thanks so much for being here. You've got 2 books, the third on the way, Who Moved My Teeth and Showering with Nana. I love that. You know,
available on Amazon.
Oh, you know what? I guess I can hold up a book. You know what? I actually
hold up your book.
Yeah, that is like a miracle that I have a book that I can hold up. I never think to do that. And I think as authors, we always have to be ready.
And I also heard authors, here's your tip. Once you write your book, you always hold it next to your face so that it really does get in the picture. Somebody told me that.
There you go. I love it. Okay, so we're giving you some inspiration and some good marketing tips today. So
yes.
Go ahead, Deb.
One last thing. This is because I'm really jazzed about this. So one of the things that I'm hearing about my book is that people don't read, like professionals in particular, they listen to books. So before the pandemic, I had a weekend set aside with a cousin who has a place to, because he's a musician, recording studio to do it. Well, that didn't happen. So guess what we're doing? I'm using Zoom and I'm sending them only the Zoom audio files.
Wow.
Together. So where there is a will, there is a way.
I love it.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's a great idea. It's a great, see, everything is within reach. Everything is possible. And you don't have to spend money. It's just investing time. And you will be so happy with the product that comes out of what you invest. And the most important review is your own review.
Exactly. So, just do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just have it for you. Have it for you.
Right. Because if you worry about the reviews, you'll never put it out there. And it's important.
And don't swear.
Then you'll get a 1 star. So if you don't want a 1 star, swear. Or don't swear, I guess. Okay, I just want to mention that we have put together great resources for libraries. So if you are interested in having more caregiving resources for members of your community, we've got great suggestions for you. We've got a list of caregiving resources that are available on a national basis. We have a list of caregiving books that you can order. And then you are welcome to share this podcast as well. Okay. Thank you, Deb. Thank you, Cathy.
Thanks, Denise.
Thank you, Denise.
Thanks, Deb.
Yeah, good to see everybody. It really is.
And I'll mention that you can go to careyersacademy.com/library to get your library resources. Okay, I'm Denise Brown. Thanks so much to listening to our Caregiving Book Club podcast. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.